Good morning, everyone, and welcome to She-Hulk Review Episode 3. I hope to get a little bit of rhyme out of that, but it's not Episode 2, so it doesn't work. Anyway, it was another episode. Stuff kind of happened, I guess, and then it ended suddenly, very suddenly, bafflingly suddenly. And I think we got all of 25 minutes of actual TV show. But we'll go over that in a second. Who's joining me this morning for this wonderful review? Random American, Fun Time Bats, Shiny Hellcat, Shady Grin, John Miller, Tall Person. Good morning. Good morning to you all. And anybody else lurking or in the future, good morning to you. So yes, Episode 3. Where'd we leave off with Episode 2? Yeah, so Jennifer Walters, a.k.a. She-Hulk, has been assigned to take over the parole hearing for Emil Blonsky. Emil Blonsky being the Abomination, one of Hulk's major enemies. Someone who committed mass destruction and several murders the last time we saw him in action, back in the Incredible Hulk movie, but somehow he has reached the end of his minimum sentence for all of this catastrophe he's caused. And so now he's up for parole, for reasons I can't understand. But either way, at the end of the last episode, it was discovered through a viral video that the Abomination had somehow escaped confinement and participated in a fight club with Wong, the sort of Sorcerer Supreme, even though he's no longer the Sorcerer Supreme. This is all very sketchy to me. I guess Wong became Sorcerer Supreme during the 5-year blip when Stephen Strange was dusted, and now Stephen Strange is back. So is Wong no longer the Sorcerer Supreme? Or is he still the Sorcerer Supreme? Because he refers to himself as such. And anyway, we'll get into it. This show is already confusing. Anyway, so Jennifer Walters shows up back at the super prison. I don't know which one it is. I don't know if it's supposed to be the Cube or one of the several other super prisons in the comic books. Anyway, she walks in to confront Emil Blonsky about, you're going to tell me about the fact that you escaped prison at one point and go in a fight club. And he says, "Oh, it wasn't my fault. I was coerced into doing it. I was against my will. It's all Wong's fault. You need to talk to Wong. I was forced to leave my cell, you see, and I returned of my own free will, because that makes it all better somehow." Let's see. Also, Angela Arriaga and It's a Llama, Non Vitae Rex. Good morning. I gotta tell you, Tim Roth, absolutely wasted in this show. Absolutely wasted. I mean, for the paycheck he's probably getting to show up and just kind of say some lines and that kind of stuff, good on him. Nice work if you can get it. But what an absolute waste of an excellent actor. Even, I made a comment about this yesterday on Twitter, of all places, if you can believe it. The actor that plays Black Manta in the Aquaman movie, he called the work in the Aquaman films as clown work. He understands that it's clown work. And maybe I'm just an idealist, but if you're a working actor and someone's paying you to do a job, you should put your all into it as much as you can, even if it's lousy material. If you're accepting the paycheck, don't phone it in, right? And Tim Roth, I don't think, is a guy who phones things in very often. At least I don't really see him doing such. And so he does the best with what he's given, but he's given so little that there's really nothing he can do with it. Either that, or they only did 1 or 2 takes and just said, let's go with that. I don't know. But either way, Tim Roth, great actor, wasted here. Anyway, so Jen is explaining to Emil how it was bad to escape from prison, and that makes it look bad for him. And he says, well, the guy who made me do it was a Sorcerer Supreme of the Mystic Arts, and his name is... And we jump over to Nikki, who is looking up Wong, the Sorcerer Supreme, on a dating app, a Facebook analog, something like that. Yeah, he's either a sorcerer who lives in New York. Employment history. Yeah. See, I keep having to tell myself and remind myself this is supposed to be a tongue-in-cheek, fourth-wall-breaking satire show, but they also want it to fit within the larger MCU, and there hasn't been a character or a show like this yet in the MCU, and so some of the jokes are so jarring in between what we've been told and how we understand things to work, but, you know, the rules just go out the window, I guess, here. Anyway, so yeah, Wong has a employment LinkedIn account, I guess, and so they try to contact Wong, and they need Wong to show up to testify on behalf of Emil. Because, yeah. And Nikki says, did you get a message to him? And Nikki says, I sent a thirst trap. It was a picture of me with a bunch of books. Okay, because he's a librarian, you see, and he's... Yeah. Anyway, so Jen is driving back from the prison to go back to the law firm, I assume, and she's all complaining about how Emil ruined her case, and then she breaks the fourth wall to say, hey, I know you can't wait to see Wong. I get it. I've always felt that the Wong hype is just more of that manufactured Twitter bot chill stuff. It's like I have nothing against the character or the actor or anything. I've just never thought that he was that standout of an element to much of anything. But then there's only been 2 Doctor Strange movies, and one of them really sucked. So anyway, she takes her hands off the wheel and, you know, is breaking the fourth wall. And she's like, I don't want you to think that this is, this is one of those cameo every week type shows. It's not, except she says, Bruce in the first episode, and then Blonsky, and now Wong. Just remember whose show this actually is. Cut to the intro. Ha 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 ha. Now, as a preamble to all this, you may recall, if you've been paying attention to Twitter, or if you haven't, there were several stories that came out about a week ago, week and a half, where the writers of the show confessed that they have no skill at writing compelling or interesting legal courtroom dialogue or drama or interactions. And boy howdy does it show in this episode. We'll get to that in a second. So, more news reports about the She-Hulk and how she's representing Abomination. And there's Tim Roth back when he was younger and more virile before he's, sort of aged in the last 10, 15 years or whatever in real life. And there's the Abomination, the redesigned Abomination, because he didn't have the little finned ears in the first rendition of him back in the Incredible Hulk. So... then we get to the Tattle News. Just more like pumping up. Oh my God, did you know that Jennifer Walters is She-Hulk? Jennifer Walters is She-Hulk. Oh my God, she's She-Hulk. Guys, did you know that she's She-Hulk? Then we get a Latino news organization saying the same thing. Oh yeah, did you know that Jennifer Walters is the She-Hulk? And then we have this guy, and I let's see. I don't get it. Why are you turning every superhero into a girl? I have no problem with female heroes, just saying, make your own. This is to represent all the haters out there, guys. All the haters out there. Why are you making all the superheroes females? Okay, well, just as a rebuttal to that, She-Hulk was made a distinct character from Hulk. She wasn't replacing the Hulk. She was just a different character who had similar powers, which we have totally not seen before with Spider-Man and Spider-Woman, Mr. Fantastic, Miss Marvel. That's it. And she was established as her own character. They did that in the very first issue of her comic book, where Bruce is freaking out over the curse he's placed upon her because of his experiences. But her situation is 180 degrees different. And her attitude about it is 180 degrees different. She embraces her Hulkdom because she can control it. It's not an out-of-control monster like it is for Bruce. She is her own character. She has her own attributes. She is not a replacement for the Hulk. Not just a stand-in taking up a mantle. Like female Thor. So, anyway, yeah, that's to represent all the haters out there, guys. Why don't you make your own characters? Yeah. Anyway, so then we keep going into more of these fake news programs talking about, did you know that Jennifer Walters is the She-Hulk and she's representing Blonsky? Hey, did you know that Jennifer Walters is the She-Hulk and she's also representing Emil Blonsky? Okay. Anyway, so we get, again, questionable CGI She-Hulk walking into the office. And apparently all those news stories were things that Nikki was watching, that we were watching through her eyes. Anyway, Emil deserves a fair hearing. And she's like, you have to respond to all these news stories. Okay, Jennifer Walters speaking. And then she goes, bad CGI, down the hall to the office. This is how exciting this show gets, guys. She's moving between rooms. Anyway, remember this guy? Remember this is a jerk attorney from the first episode, and I think he was in like 3 seconds of the second episode. We finally have a name for him, or at least I think it's the first time I've ever heard his name said out loud. Dennis Bukowski. I'm assuming this is a character from the comic books, but I don't recognize it offhand. Anyway, Dennis Bukowski, assistant district attorney, has come to this private law firm because he got defrauded out of $175,000 from a shape-shifting Asgardian who posed herself as Megan Thee Stallion. Now, if you've never heard of Megan Thee Stallion, I feel I'm envious of you, but you will hear that name said full. It's never like Miss Stallion or that Stallion lady. It's always Megan Thee Stallion as one thing. You will hear that said in this episode over and over and over and over and over again. It's not even comical. It just gets annoying. But anyway, so the shapeshifter made herself look like Miss Stallion and fooled our erstwhile, Lothario here into thinking that he was dating a super-duper famous person, and she defrauded him out of a lot of money and stuff. So She-Hulk walks in. Okay, She-Hulk, who just said that Emil Blonsky deserves a fair hearing, right? Because she's all for her client, even if her client's a terrible person. And then she sees that Dennis is here looking for representation, and she says, I would love to know what this is about and not work on it. Right, because you see, everyone deserves a fair hearing unless it's that guy. Because I don't like that guy. Okay. And then all of a sudden, this character pops in, and I don't know who this character is. She pops in for like 3 seconds. You wanted to see me? Ah, yes. Mallory Book is also at the Superhuman Law Division. Like, okay. And then Dennis, who is, archetypal jerkwad male chauvinist. Yeah, no, I can't talk to a 10 about embarrassing man stuff. So that's the lawyer they bring in to represent him. And he's like, no, I can't talk to a 10 about embarrassing man stuff. Okay. She could be my next fiancé. Uh-huh. And then he looks over to Pug, who we find out in this episode's last name is Puglisi or something, so that's where the Pug thing comes from. And he says, is he a lawyer? He looks cool. I'll take him. I keep waiting for that sort of quirky humor thing to happen. Sort of a Boston Legal kind of thing. This is in my dream of dreams, right, a She-Hulk fourth wall breaking satirical legal show would basically be Boston Legal with super characters, right? It's not impossible to do. It's been done. There are people out there who did it for many seasons. Why didn't you hire those writers? I don't know. Anyway, so yes, they're going to represent this guy because he was defrauded, and at the same time we have Emil Blonsky's parole hearing. Oh my gosh, we have a show with an A story and a B story happening for the first time in 3 episodes. All right. So anyway, he wants to get representation to get his money back because he bought her a bunch of jewelry and bought her a car and this other stuff, and he was fooled into thinking that he was dating a superstar. And she's like, sorry, you thought you were dating Megan Thee Stallion? And he says, what part of Shapeshifter did you not get? I'm like, well, that's not a bad point, I suppose. You thought she drove a Passat? This is why I don't want Walters. You see, again, I know, it's just, I keep dwelling on this, but she goes to the mat for somebody who tried to kill her cousin and says he deserves a fair hearing. A guy who's murdered people and caused massive destruction and tried to kill her cousin and does a whole bunch of horrible things. That guy deserves a fair hearing, but she's going to get into here and just crap all over this guy. Yeah, anyway. Okay, so then Wong shows up. And nobody blinks an eye that, you know, this portal's opened up in the middle of nowhere, and I'm assuming that despite the fact that aliens have invaded and all this other stuff, that still, you know, a trans-dimensional portal opening up in your office would at least cause some hesitation, but everybody's just kind of like, whatever. Anyway, so Wong shows up. Now, there's a scene in the trailers of an interaction between Wong and She-Hulk, where he says some things about magic, and she says, no, we're going to do this by the book. And he goes, the Book of Vishanti. Which doesn't make any sense. She's like, no, the Book of American Laws. And the CGI looks terrible. That's not here. I don't know if that's going to show up in a subsequent episode or something. It would seem like this is where that should show up, but that scene isn't in here. Not that I was really looking forward to it. I'm just kind of surprised that they would leave anything they were willing to showcase about this show on the cutting room floor after the marketing. But anyway, so Wong says, yes, everything Blonsky told you is factual. I broke him out of prison because I needed to use him as a part of my training to become Sorcerer Supreme. What? I mean, that part made no sense to me at all. It's like, okay, so in order to become Sorcerer Supreme, you had to break a supervillain out of prison who is a known murderer and terrorist, basically, and take him to an underground fight club in... I forget where it took place because it was in Shang-Chi, and then fight him in front of an audience and then return him to his prison. And that was to get your Sorcerer Supreme merit badge? What? How? Why? And besides, the whole thing was kind of a setup anyway. My understanding, I haven't watched Shang-Chi, I'll admit that. I did watch the scene of the cage fight or whatever. It seemed to me that they were doing some kind of con, like, you know, it was a whole fight set up just for money or something. So I guess Wong is lying here? I guess. I mean, you wouldn't know it if, like, since my not having watched Shang-Chi, I have only this show to go off of, and the information he's giving makes no sense in the first place, and it makes no sense as compared to what little I know of what happened in Shang-Chi, but anyway, so he says, as Sorcerer Supreme, I insist that he not be punished for my actions. And then he stands up and walks out, or tries to walk out, and she's like, that's not my decision. Like, apparently Wong simply does not operate in the real world in any way, shape, or form. But he has a LinkedIn profile, but he thinks that he can just wave his hand and make legal problems go away. Well, I suppose, depending on what spell you're using, you could. Anyway, he starts making jokes and in references to other movies, like, I know what you're thinking, Miss Walters, and I'm not erasing anyone's memories. That's a very messy thing. Not again. And she's like, I wasn't asking about that. And it's also very messy. Yeah, remember Spider-Man No Way Home? Remember that? Except it wasn't Wong erasing people's memories, it was Doctor Strange that did that. And so when did Wong erase people's memories? I don't know. I don't understand that. And then suddenly he says, okay, we'll send him to the mirror dimension. The mirror dimension is like a prison. Why would you suddenly say we'll send him to the mirror dimension? As established in the first Doctor Strange movie, the mirror dimension is sort of it is an alternate plane of reality where you're basically interacting with a reflection of the real world and you're trapped. It is a place you send people to keep them away from living people and reality. You broke him out of prison to get your merit badge, and now you're coming in to testify in his defense for his parole, and now suddenly, out of nowhere, in the middle of a conversation, it makes no sense, we'll send him to the mirror dimension. A prison. And She-Hulk's like, what? And he's like, how about the shadow dimension? The shadow dimension? What? I don't know. Anyway, what you can do to help is show up at the hearing and explain everything. I don't know. Anyway, so then we have this conversation between Pug and Bukowski where he explains how much he spent on the fake Mrs. Stallion. And it ended up being $175,000 in gifts and car payments and who knows what else. And boy, oh boy, is he stupid to have thought that he was dating the real superstar. And yeah, that's pretty stupid. That's pretty stupid. Yeah, it is. Okay. Does stupidity equal... See, I don't know. I don't know what would be if you pose as someone who you aren't, and someone freely gives you money under the premise of no return other than companionship, but you're fooling them about your identity. Maybe they're guilty of identity theft, but are they guilty of a fraud in such a way that they owe you that money back for not being who you are, but not under any kind of contract situation? I don't know. I don't know what the real law would be behind that. But anyway, then we have Uscreen. Hey, I guess this is the MCU version of YouTube. Uscreen. And then there's like video of Megan Thee Stallion imposter fight at Celebre or something. And this is what Pug is watching, because we have to establish that this is the shape changer. Our little elf lady here. She's the shape changer. Okay, so anyway, Pug had said, okay, I will defend you and I'll cook up a defense and we'll go to court soon. And the Bukowski guy leaves. And all of a sudden, Bukowski comes back and says, I got a change of heart. I'm going to drop the case. And I'm sitting there as the audience member going, oh, it's the shapeshifter. And he's like, the truth is, I think somewhere deep inside, I knew, you know? I gave those things because I wanted to. And Pug's like, what? I have to say, this is unexpected. Well, it's just money after all. By the way, how does a assistant district attorney make such an amazing salary that they can afford to blow $175,000 on a girlfriend? Like, I mean, I don't think public servants make that much, or he just... I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, I'm trying to rationalize this too much. I can't help myself. Anyway, so yeah, shapeshifter person, eventually... Well, he figures it out because Dennis calls him all of a sudden to talk about, somebody towed my Cybertruck. Cybertruck? Really? Again, this guy's working on an assistant district attorney's salary. I realize that Los Angeles is a relatively wealthy town. I don't know how much an ADA makes on an average day. Or is she in New York? I don't know where she is. Anyway, I don't think this guy could conceivably afford Cybertruck and $175,000 to blow on a girlfriend and God knows what else. Unless he's just, I guess, independently wealthy otherwise and just does ADA stuff for kicks. But anyway, yeah, so Bukowski's on the phone with Pug and Shapeshifter's right here drinking a Red Bull. They bring up Red Bull a couple of times in this episode. I'm not quite sure if that's just, you know, blatant product placement or if there's some kind of joke coming someday. Anyway, so he calls security and then Shapeshifter runs out in the middle of the workspace and says, "I love harassing women in the workplace. It's my kick, baby." And then Shapeshifter shapeshifts out and then runs away. And then real Pug comes out and says, you know, "I don't do that kind of thing. You guys know me. You've worked with me. You guys know me." Well, if the shapeshifter just revealed that it was a shapeshifter, why would you feel the need to verify that? Anyway, so back to the prison, and then the press is there for the parole hearing, and there's some rumor going around that she was rejected by the Avengers. She-Hulk was. Like, okay. Is that supposed to be a running gag? I guess. Anyway, she comes in. And in the background here are his pen pals. There was a joke in the previous episode. I'm not quite sure if I mentioned it. He has 7 pen pals who are going to take care of him once he's released. Basically, these little, you know, midsummer cult girls or something. So yeah, they've bought a plot of land somewhere where he's going to have a meditation camp and who knows what. That's a gag. That's haha funny. Okay. So Wong is late. Wong is like the key witness. Wong is going to explain the whole escape from prison thing, because that looks really bad. Escaping from prison when you're looking for parole, that looks really bad. And so the parole board here they're trying to decide if he's suitable for return to society after having served his minimum sentence. And again, he murdered people and destroyed half of Harlem. And attempted to kill several military officials and innocent civilians. And his minimum sentence was, what, 10 years? I mean, 15 years or something? Really? That's it? Man, that guy had a good lawyer the first time around, I tell you what. And it wasn't Jennifer Walters. Anyway, so, again, writing staff having an inability to write compelling, legal, courtroom drama stuff. This is primary example number 1. This entire sequence where we have the parole hearing and we have witnesses coming up talking about, you know, how much good he's done while in the prison. He's led meditation classes and yoga classes, and he's helped literacy. And, and also I'm very remorseful, and yes, I really am. And all of this, just my opinion, all of this is boring. It is pablum. It's nothing. It's like, it is exactly what you'd expect of someone who has absolutely no idea how to write compelling legalese or put any drama into it or put any stakes into it. And it's just people talking with no comedy. It's like, hey, Emil, tell people that you're sorry. Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. I've changed. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the same man that was here before. If released, would you have a place to live? Oh, yeah, he's got a piece of land with his 7 pen pals. And it's going to be a meditation retreat. Yeah. Uh-huh. And how do you intend to fund this endeavor, Mr. Blonsky? Well, he's in a long-term committed relationship with several pen pals. So they're just going to pay for it? Yeah, they're going to financially support him. And they're like throwing gang signs and stuff, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, fun. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Okay, and then we have these other witnesses who's like, oh yeah, he's led guided meditation and yoga for the prisoners. Okay. And he helped some guard, like, fix his bad marriage. A guard named Carl Cowart. this is supposed to be funny or something. It's just not funny. It just, and again, when I say it's not funny, not in the sense of I'm offended, that makes me feel bad. No, it's just like the absence of humor, no punchline, no. Anyway. Okay, so we get through this. We're waiting for Wong. We keep waiting for Wong. It's like waiting for Godot, but we're waiting for Wong. Wong. And then finally Wong shows up. Again, trans-dimensional portal thing, and nobody flinches. I've asked Wong here today, because everybody's supposed to know who Wong is, the Sorcerer Supreme. You know, there was always this sort of sense that there was this separation, there was this mystery between certain aspects of the Marvel Universe and others. Like, some superheroes were like public figures, like Iron Man, and Spider-Man was sort of a, you know, quasi-villain or mysterious figure because of J. Jonah Jameson. And of course the Fantastic Four, their identities are known, they're public figures. And then there were some superheroes that were sort of off to the side, you know, sort of in the recesses of people's knowledge of what they did, and very mysterious. Doctor Strange being one of them, you know. Some characters just existed on the outskirts of public attention, like the Punisher or Ghost Rider. And so, yeah, just Wong just teleports into a maximum security prison, which, of course, doesn't have any of the guards or anybody else going like, what? Anyway, so he starts talking, and he's like, yes, have you ever heard of a Kumite? He says. And I'm like, oh, I've heard of a Kumite. I saw Bloodsport. Kumite. Okay, USA. Bottom brick. You know, anybody who's seen Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, you know what a Kumite is. Well, you know, he asked if they haven't. They haven't, of course, because they haven't watched Bloodsport. Which just baffles me, because everybody should have watched Bloodsport by now. But anyway, let's cut from that to our B story. Remember our B story with the shapeshifter? So we have another courtroom drama where attorney says, I move for dismissal of all charges against my client. Runa is the daughter of an elfin diplomat on Asgard and now in New Asgard. So she has diplomatic immunity. And the judge is like, she may have diplomatic immunity in New Asgard, but we are not in New Asgard. That's not how the argument for diplomatic immunity works, sir. I don't know if you know that. I'm sitting there as an audience member, complete layman in the law, but if you're making an argument for diplomatic immunity, it means the argument is that you have an argument against being prosecuted somewhere other than the place you are coming from because you are in a diplomatic role. And so this sentence makes absolutely no sense. And this is coming from a character who is to be a judge in this story. And if you can believe it, this is all written by people who do not know how to write compelling legal interactions. I know, I'm nitpicking here, but if you're going to be saying you're running a legal-based sitcom, at least some of the points you make in a legal context should have some basis in reality and logic. And unless I'm absolutely missing something, and I'm happy to be corrected, but as I listened to that line, it completely threw my brain off into, what? You know, or, I mean, what would be a better response, right? Like, New Asgard is not a recognized nation unto itself. Something like that. Or New Asgard has not been recognized by the United States as a sovereign nation. That would be a good comeback and fall within the realm of a reasonable argument against diplomatic immunity. Right? You know, if the United States has not established diplomatic ties, if there is not an embassy for the United States inside New Asgard or vice versa, you know, that would be a reasonable argument. This makes no sense. Anyway, so they argue. So the elf stands up and says, but Asgard is not a place, it is a people. Therefore And the judge shuts her down and says, you know, you don't get to, like, restate old Thor speeches. Like, was that a Thor speech? I thought that was an Odin speech. Didn't Odin make that point in Ragnarok? I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. My client was defrauded of $175,000 by a scam artist. Well, again, the only scam that she pulled was her identity. Were there any promises? Were there any contracts? I honestly don't know what the legal recourse is if I say I am the son of Sidney Poitier. How would you like to take me to dinner? I'll take you to dinner. And I spend, you know, $100 taking you to dinner. And then I find out you're not Sidney Poitier's son. Does Sidney Poitier's son then owe me $100 because I thought he was Sidney Poitier's son? I don't know. I don't know what the legal basis is for that argument. I honestly don't. And that's the thing about, like, Boston Legal and other legal shows. Usually they have consultants on those shows who know the law and can advise to make things, even if they have to be sort of larger than life and more condensed for the sake of a television show, they at least make some sense in reality. They have some grounding in existing legal theory. So if anybody out there knows the actual truth of, I pose myself as someone I am not in an official capacity, not as a public official, but just as a celebrity or something, and I do nothing else but convince you I am someone I'm not, and you spend money on me of your own free will, am I then liable for that money that you spent on me? Just on that basis, right? No contracts involved, no exchange of goods per se, except maybe my time or something. Does that constitute fraud that is liable? I mean, I guess you can make a civil suit just about out of anything, but still. Anyway, so lawyer says, my client and Mr. Bukowski were in a consensual relationship. No rational adults would have believed my client's texts were from the real Megan Thee Stallion, and went along with it until it no longer suited him. I did not. Anyway, I don't know how... There's not much to summarize here. It's just back and forth, and then they adjourn for the time being, and then Bukowski guy, he complains about the dating app he found her on. And when this is over, I'm canceling my Hollywood Hookups subscription. There's clearly no vetting process. Hollywood Hookups. Okay. And then all of a sudden, the judge comes back to the stand. And the judge says, in light of some new information I have just received, I'm changing my ruling. Even though he hadn't really ruled on anything yet. And, you know, the shapeshifter lady is not there. And the pug guy says, come on, Runa, this is getting a little broad. A little broad? All right. Impersonating a judge is illegal. Get down from there, her lawyer says. Yeah, because now, regardless of what the legal theory behind the fraud might be, our character is decidedly breaking the law for no apparent gain or reason, just to be fun. I guess she's a trickster, right? She's one of Loki's ilk in a way. So she's just doing funny things to be funny. And that was that scene. And then we cut back to this scene in the middle of the same conversation that Wong was having before we cut away from the other one. So I guess the other courtroom scene was happening parallel, because all that time we spent in the other courtroom scene doesn't affect the time frame of the scene we left. Yay, editing. Anyway, so Wong is like, yeah, it wasn't Blonsky's fault. I gave him no choice. How did Wong give him no choice? I don't know. It's never explained. Like, how did he force him to do it? Never explains how it's no choice. But it was absolutely his choice to return. I offered him asylum at the Carmitage, which is lovely this time of year. As though anybody here would have any idea what that is or where that is. because, you know, secret sorcerer society protecting the Earth realm from interdimensional threats and all that. Anyway, but he chose to serve out his sentence and repay his debt to society. And then Jennifer jumps up. So you see, Emil Blonsky was forced out of his cell against his will. How? Maybe I missed a line of dialogue somewhere, but it is never explained what was done to him that made him act outside of his own will. They just say he was. And it sure didn't look like he was being held against his will in the clip I saw from Shang-Chi. So I don't know. And even when offered instant freedom, he chose to return to his cell. So if he was offered freedom, but he was taken out of his cell against his will, why did he have any freedom to choose where he would end up? These are not the actions of a criminal, but a reformed man who truly wants to do the right thing. Well, that may be true of Emil Blonsky. But when Blonsky uncontrollably becomes Abomination, yes, isn't he a raging monster out for blood? Okay, well, here's a question then. If you truly believe that, why would he ever be up for parole? I mean, ever, for anything. You know, even if he, the man, has somehow reformed or something, if there is always a persistent threat of him just letting loose and rampaging across the countryside uncontrollably, wouldn't you have to keep him locked up forever? Sort of like, you know, someone who's criminally insane, effectively, except they're biologically criminally insane? Why would it ever be a question? Why don't you have a scientist in here to testify as to whether or not his condition is controllable, whether or not his condition is anything? Why don't you have an expert on gamma radiation or something come in and talk about this? Hell, why isn't the Hulk here testifying on his behalf? Oh, right, he's off in space somewhere. Anyway, so then Blonsky volunteers to put their minds at ease, and he turns into the Abomination right there in the cell. And everybody freaks out. Oh my God, he turned into the Abomination inside of his highly secured, max, impenetrable cell. Like, okay, I guess it could... Now, of course, him turning into the Abomination makes everybody freak out. Wong teleporting into the parole hearing doesn't do anything to anybody. That's not a problem. But anyway, he turns into the thing everybody knows he turns into inside of a cell that is specifically designed to house him, surrounded by all the guards, brick walls, and everything else they're supposed to be able to contain him. And up until Wong showed up, have contained him conceivably for the last 15 some odd years, but now everybody freaks out. Oh, I should also mention, because it happened so quickly and I skipped over it, as Wong concluded his testimony, the parole guy said, you know, you did break that guy out of jail, and that in and of itself is a crime. And Wong is like, bye-bye, and he just zips out. Okay. Anyways, everybody's freaking out and screaming, oh my God, the Abomination transformed inside of his own cage, and all the guards are like, oh my God, he's inside the cage designed to hold him, which had to be at some point designed by Stark Tech and or assistance by Bruce Banner. But anyway, he's like, hey, look, it's me, and I'm still me, and I'm talking like me, and I'm not going crazy, and that's it, okay? And now I'm Blonsky again. See, I can control it. I don't turn into an uncontrollable monster. I'm totally fine. I'm just like Bruce Banner now, because, you know, gamma monsters are just misunderstood. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to forgive Mr. Blonsky's enthusiasm. He didn't intend to frighten anyone. That might be true, and everybody getting frightened was silly. Mr. Blonsky could have broken free, but has chosen to remain in his cell. He could have broken free, really? So, that cell he's been in this entire time is useless, you say? Right? The cell that he has been in for 15 years is pointless this entire time. When he turns the Abomination, a cell designed to hold the Abomination would never have held the Abomination if he didn't want it to. Okay. Anyway, his stellar prison record reflects Mr. Blonsky spent his entire incarceration so that he may walk among his fellow citizens with no chance of becoming a rampaging abomination again. He deserves a future as a free man and a productive citizen, after committing several murders and massive property damage and attempted murder. Okay. So, if you can believe this, they end up letting him go. Oh, there's the scene with, I forgot that Wong was here. Okay, so Wong is still here, and the guy says, yeah, you did break him out of prison, and, you just admitted to facilitating a prisoner escape, which is a crime. Yoink! And he just jets out. And that's it for that. So anyway, Jennifer Walters leaves and goes to a bar, because it's time to go to the bar and have drinks with Nikki and complain about how she's still seen as She-Hulk. And I just want to be a normal lawyer that's boring. And Nikki's like, Jen, the genie is out of the bottle. You are a story now. Yeah, we knew this, in episode 1. We knew this certainly in episode 2. And now we're being told it again in episode 3. Because every episode we have to be reminded, Jen just wants to be a normal girl. You can't be a normal girl anymore, Jen. You're She-Hulk. Did you know that you're She-Hulk? Let's have 3 more fake news shows tell us that She-Hulk is Jen Walters. So anyway, and then she's like, oh my gosh, the tabloids, they say that you're having a baby with Emil Blonsky. You got a baby bump. And then Pug shows up. And he's like, oh my god, Dennis Bukowski. And then here comes our fourth wall break again. Jen bumps in and says, connecting the A and B story. Nice. Yeah. You can get away with that a little bit in a show that's supposed to be satirical fourth wall breaking. It was just a very awkward editing job to plunk down the B story in the middle of the A story in the middle of a sentence. Anyway, and they just complain about Dennis because Dennis is a jerk. And she's like, the man is almost terminally deluded. I'd call him gross. And he's like, oh, I got an idea. I'm going to put you on the stand. And so he puts Jennifer Walters on the stand. And Dennis is like, hey, P-Dog, how is Jen our best option? I gave you a whole list of my boys as character witnesses, I guess. And so what is the great legal strategy here? To have Jennifer Walters testify. Jennifer Walters, who is a co-worker of this person, right, to testify that he is a deluded narcissist who really would believe that he was dating Megan Thee Stallion. Right? That was the major legal question. Is it believable that this guy could be fooled into thinking he was dating a superstar? Because that's what the case hinges upon, apparently. The believability that he really thought that he was dating a superstar after we have seen and after has been accepted that we're dealing with a supernatural shape changer. That is what this case hinges on. The believability of the testimony of the purported victim. That he was fooled into thinking that someone wasn't who they were. A supernatural shape changer. Anyway, so we spend the next few minutes with Jen saying that Dennis is a terrible person and he's an egotist and blah, blah, blah. He's a chauvinist and he's terrible. And he is deluded enough to believe that he would be dating a superstar or that a superstar would want to date him. And by the way, I cannot represent it correctly in the course of just clicking through frames of this show, but Megan Thee Stallion, those 3 words put together are, as I said earlier, have repeated over and over and over and over again in this show. Over and over and over and over again. Megan Thee Stallion. Megan Thee Stallion. Megan Thee Stallion. Megan Thee Stallion. There it is again. Third time in as many clicks. And then the judge, I award full damages to Dennis Bukowski in the amount of $175,000. Does a Asgardian elf actually have regular money? I don't know how that works. But anyway, also sentenced the defendant to 60 days for impersonating a judge. You know, the actual crime that she committed? The one that doesn't really have any confusion to it? And she's like, no, 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 no. And then, if you can believe it, Megan Thee Stallion is in the audience. Wow, Megan Thee Stallion. You know, I'm such a fuddy-duddy. I understand that she is a Grammy Award-winning, music star or something. I couldn't hum a single one of her songs if my life depended on it. I don't know anything about her music. I was asking around. I was like, is she such a super international superstar that this is somehow funny? It kind of reminds me of Arsenic and Old Lace. You guys ever hear of that play, Arsenic and Old Lace? The conceit for that play is that whoever the main star is, they're a known celebrity, but the character they're playing just happens to be someone who looks a lot like that celebrity. So I think one of the original ones was like Cary Grant, right? And Cary Grant ends up on stage and says, a lot of people say I look like Cary Grant. And then, you move on with the story and you have this character who just happens to look like the celebrity. That's part of the joke. That's part of the conceit of the play. And so you can have that play starring anybody, right, of note, and then they just make that joke. That's what I kept thinking was trying to be done here with the whole Megan Thee Stallion thing, which I think I made a joke in Lords of the Night because I'd heard the lady's name, but I hadn't memorized it. So I was like, I just said Megan Treehorse because I didn't know. I just had seen the name somewhere and I was trying to remember it. Anyway, so Megan Thee Stallion appears in the show, and so they're doing the walk of yay, I won my case, and then he says, I wish there was a way we could remove her powers so that she couldn't cause this kind of problem again. And then Jen is like, oh, did Dennis Bukowski just give me an idea? I don't know. Did he? That will stay between us. Yeah, because you couldn't possibly be inspired by a man or something. Anyway, back at the prison, all the reporters are there again, and then we're at the parole hearing, and the parole bro comes in, and all of his girlfriends are praying for his release. And they're like, okay, we're going to grant his release on parole effective immediately. He's prohibited from turning into Abomination indefinitely. And he'll be wearing and ordered to wear an inhibitor in perpetuity. So an inhibitor is the magical Marvel Universe thing that suppresses someone's powers. How it does this? Never really explained. Sometimes in the comic books they'll have something like, keeping, like if you have a supervillain whose powers are based on ice, you keep them in an overheated cell or something so they can't like ice up or whatever. You have some counterpoint to whatever their powers are, but most times it's just we put a collar on you and this thing is supposed to somehow repress your ability to do your thing. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but anyway. So they're just going to let him go with a, just basically with an ankle bracelet on, and that's it. And she's like, just stay out of the news, Emil. That's all I ask. They're going to write a story about you one way or the other, I do not understand this perpetual thing of, oh my gosh, the media knows that she's She-Hulk and is talking about her as She-Hulk. Like, didn't we have this established in the last 2 episodes? Isn't it just, what more needs to be said about that? Media saturation. Oh my god, we have a new Hulk and she's Jennifer Walters, and so what? Get past it. It doesn't matter. What is this doing to help push the story along? Whatever the story is. I don't know. Anyway, Jennifer decides to counter all of this fake news about her and all this hype by going on the news. She-Hulk speaks. Who is She-Hulk? And who is Jen Walters? They're the same person. I'm not quite sure what the message is. Is this trying to speak as to, you know, a celebrity's public image versus their private image? Is that what it is? Is that what we keep hyping on about this? I don't know. So anyway, a slightly better CGI Jennifer Walters. I think it has to do with the fact that she's sitting relatively still. And she's like, yeah, my name is Jennifer Walters, not She-Hulk. Yeah, because nobody in the MCU public universe has any idea about the concept between a superhero name and a real name, because Tony Stark, Iron Man, doesn't exist, obviously. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, well, he doesn't exist anymore because he got his identity erased and everything. But you know what I'm talking about. This is like, is this really something that needs to be explained to people at this stage of the game? After 15 some odd years of Steve Rogers, Captain America, Tony Stark, Iron Man, Thor is just Thor, unless it's female Thor. Anyway, the high-profile nature of this case and the fact that you yourself are a Hulk has catapulted you into the public eye. Well, yeah, but she was in the public eye before she had that case because she was She-Hulk and she hulked out in the middle of a court case and she saved a bunch of jurors. And so she was in the news before this happened. And do you remember your own show by any chance? Anyway. And he's like, where did you come up with the name She-Hulk? Even though anybody who's been paying attention to the actual news knows that the term was coined on a... We saw that in the last episode, remember? Remember that? Anyway, so she's complaining about that name again. I guess I'm just She-Hulk now. And that was that. That was that thing. Anyway, so Jennifer drives home, and she's walking down an alley, and all of a sudden, a guy in a construction helmet jumps out from the shadows and runs up behind her and grabs her. Now, who is this weirdo with a construction helmet that's glowing? Well, for those of you not in the know, there is a team of supervillains in the Marvel Universe called the Wrecking Crew. And the Wrecking Crew, let's just say that they are a bunch of regular sort of toughs, as it were, thugs, as it were, who ended up getting empowered in various ways through Asgardian magic. Okay, I could pull up the Marvel Wiki on that, but anyway. But the Wrecking Crew, all of them are sort of bigger than normal people. They're kind of like mini Hulks. Each one of them is sort of like super duper buff, you know, almost a Juggernaut-like in a way. This Wrecking Crew isn't. They're all just like normal guys. And he's like, I got her. Come on, guys. I got her. And she's struggling. And then she's like, oh, wait a second. I can turn into a Hulk. And so she hulks out. And then she just get off me and throws the guy. Right? And then the rest of the Wrecking Crew shows up. And they all have glowing Asgardian weapons. And this guy says, if you're gonna strut around showing off your powers, you better be able to back it up. What? A, that makes absolutely no sense for this situation. Even the character herself says something to that effect. She's like, strutting around with my powers. She's like, when did I ever strut around and show off my powers? And she's absolutely right, so that makes no sense. Each of these guys is holding super duper glowy weapons and or, I guess, the construction helmet. Right? So these are magical items that in the comic books imbue them with really buff magical powers. Okay? And they're all like getting ready and she's like, all right, let's do this. Yeah, so 4 guys with magical weapons show up just out of nowhere in the alley next to your house, and you're like, okay, let's just fight. And so they run up at her and they start hitting her with these magical weapons, and they do nothing. Like, literally nothing. It's like hitting somebody with a Nerf toy. Nothing happens, and she just beats them up. And then this guy in a mask tries to jab a giant syringe into her, but if you can believe it, the needle bends. Now, I can accept that these guys are stupid, right? The Wrecking Crew in the comic books aren't exactly, you know, mental marvels or anything. No pun intended. But if you're going to try to inject and or extract something from someone who is a super being, why didn't you have the guy in the construction helmet do that when she was still in human form? What was the point of having him jump her? When you've seen on camera at the court video and everything that she can just turn into She-Hulk at will? Anyway, so they jump her and apparently are trying to extract stuff from her. Magical weapons have no effect on her, which makes absolutely no sense in the Marvel Universe, because even the Hulk was affected by magical Asgardian weapons. And apparently that's where they got these weapons from in this show, because she makes a joke, and I can't find that frame. She says something effective, where did you get those things? You know, some Asgardian construction site? And they're like, yeah. Okay, so She-Hulk's immune to magic, I guess? Anyway, they all escape and back to their van, and like, okay, fellas, I admit, that did not go exactly as I imagined it. And they're like, did you get it? And he's like, no, once she turned into She-Hulk, I couldn't pierce that nasty green skin. Nasty green skin? Okay. Damn it, boss is gonna be mad. And they just call him male villain. Okay, each of these characters has a name, you know, in the comic books. It's the Wrecking Crew. There's Thunderball and Wrecker and I forget the other guy's name. Was it Dozer? Like Bulldozer? Anyway, guess it doesn't matter. They get away. She-Hulk picks up her papers, looks in the reflection of the car door, and that's it. That's the show. It just ends right there. Nothing. Like, and that's the end of the show. Her looking into her reflection in a car door, as though she should be surprised by the fact that she looks like She-Hulk, or I don't know. Anyway, then we get the credit sequence, but then we have the all-important post-credit scene, where, if you can believe it, Megan Thee Stallion continues her cameo appearance in taking on Jennifer Walters as her new lawyer. You know, the lady who's in the superhuman legal department, and now she's going to be the personal lawyer of Megan Thee Stallion. And then they start twerking. She-Hulk and Mrs. Stallion, or Miss Stallion, start twerking. Remember how this show was complaining in various ways about the objectification of women? Remember that? Remember that from like episode 1 and episode 2 and a little bit here in episode 3? Well, that doesn't matter. And so they start dancing together, and Megan Thee Stallion says, "You're much more fun than my last lawyer." And then She-Hulk says, "I will kill for you, Megan Thee Stallion." And Megan's like, "Dial it back." And then we cut to the end. So what did we have in this episode? Well, we had two very badly written legal plots. We had a incomprehensible attack with magical weapons, of which apparently She-Hulk is immune to, and some plot to extract her blood. For purposes I can only imagine, because that's never been done before, by some sinister, unknown villain, who I'm sure we'll find out about in the next episode or so. And that's it. That's the show. So, there you go. I saved you some time. Not much else to say about it. I'll take a second here or three to check on anything you guys might want to say. Random American. Wait, I thought the only magic was in the crowbar. The head guy was able to transfer its power among his friends. That might be how it's in the comic books. In this one, each one of those guys had some magical item. Each one had like a little... one guy had a ball and chain deal, one guy had the crowbar, one guy had like a gauntlet or something. Anyway, either way, they all had magical items that gave them absolutely no magical powers. Because they were effectively just regular men that She-Hulk just picked up and threw around, and that was it. So, of what purpose were their magical items? How did that give them any kind of advantage? I don't know. But it sure looked like She-Hulk just had literal plot armor, because nothing happened. She shows up in an alley, 4 guys jump her, and nothing happens. All that scene did was tell us that those 4 guys exist, and that they're working for someone we don't know yet. That's like it. Yeah. No One Knower. Sounds like Drinker Was Right is a 2-act show. I mean, the last episode ended very suddenly. This episode ended very suddenly. There was no cliffhanger. There was no sense of resolution to anything. Like, there was... if you're going to have 2 different plots in a show, there should be... Each one should have an arc. But it's just like, I'm going to go defend Emil Blonsky. Emil Blonsky's defended, and we're done. There was no sense of stakes. You know, the Emil Blonsky didn't sound like somebody who really deserved to get out, even in the portrayal of it. His interaction with her felt disingenuous or an act. You know, there was a talent in writing. I keep coming back to Boston Legal because I think that's what this show is trying to be, you know, or Ally McBeal or something. There was a trick in Boston Legal where, you know, Alan Shore, played by James Spader, he would often have clients who were, in various different ways, either despicable or unlikable or something, but the show was able to find a way to humanize the character, even if it was only through the legal argument being put up as part of the plot, right? Like, there was cleverness there. Right? Even if it was cynical, and it often was. None of that is present here. Nothing makes any sense. None of it feels even grounded. If you're going to do a show about the law in the MCU, there should be something to ground what you are doing in the real world. Because when you're talking about the laws of the United States, at least for the sake of this show, you're talking about the real world interacting with superhuman people. And there could be some really interesting questions to bring up if you put a superhuman element into existing law. Like, what would you do if you had a superpowered person who is just living their life, but their powers just happen to inconvenience some people? Right? Would you look at that as a disability? Would that fall into sort of some kind of, you can't discriminate against this person because they have no control over this, that? There could be some funny, goofy, poignant, interesting moral and legal questions in that context. I could imagine a whole slew of things you could come up with, right? Like Wolverine. You know, should he be persecuted every time he goes to the airport because he cannot help that his skeleton is imbued with metal? Right? His claws are a part of his anatomy. Are they weapons? Is he guilty of carrying a concealed weapon when he cannot help but have the... You know, silly things like that. I could take a list of superheroes or supervillains that I just know off the top of my head and think, what would actually happen if this person had to be put into a legal context? You could have some fun with that. There is no fun here. Nothing so far. Maybe they'll improve. I don't know. Maybe there's some court case in episode 6 or something that's going to make it all worthwhile. But nothing. And even the stuff that they try to do makes no sense. And Megan the Stallion. There should be a counter. There should be a counter and a drinking game for this particular episode for how many times her name is said in the course of this episode, because it's a lot. It's a lot. Anyway, I'm going to stop here because I've got nothing more to add to this, and that was the review. as far as like, okay, which is the worst episode? So episode 1 is still the worst episode for writing, editing, and terrible drama and characterization. Episode 2 was just boring because nothing happened. There was nothing that happened in episode 2 that you could not have condensed into this episode. Like you could probably have covered most of the ground in this episode by using some of the space in the last episode. And it again ended on a completely nonsense point in the story with yeah. Anyway, I think it had a longer running time than the last episode. I think it got to about 25 minutes of actual show as compared to the 22 minutes of the previous episode. Although you had to sit through 37 some odd minutes to get those 22 minutes. All right. Anyway, everybody, that's it. Until next week, as far as this goes. As for me, you can find me again here tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode of TED Excellence. And tonight's TED Excellence is titled Living Beyond the Binary, Decolonizing Queer Communities. What does one have to do with the other? I don't know. We'll find out together tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel for TED Excellence. Everyone, thank you for joining me for this review of She-Hulk Episode 3. I hope you all have a good rest of your Thursday. I hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.